Grace had always been a bit of a wild card. Her magic, a vibrant, chaotic force that seemed to dance and shimmer around her, was as unpredictable as she was. It was this very unpredictability that had landed her in trouble yet again. She stood before the Grand Council of the Academy of Arcane Arts, her heart pounding in her chest. The stern faces of the council members, their robes adorned with intricate magical symbols, bore down on her. She had been accused of causing a minor explosion in the potions lab, a mishap that had left the room a smoking ruin and a few unfortunate students with singed eyebrows. Grace, the head of the council, a stern-faced woman named Alara, began, her voice as cold as the winter wind. Your reckless behavior is a danger to yourself and to others. We have tolerated your antics for far too long. As a result, we must expel you from the academy. Grace's breath caught in her throat. Expulsion? She had always dreamed of becoming a powerful sorceress, of mastering the arcane arts. This was not the path she had envisioned. But I didn't mean to, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Alara shook her head. Your intentions are irrelevant, Grace. Your actions have consequences. With a heavy heart, Grace turned and left the council chamber. As she walked through the academy grounds, she couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. She had spent years honing her magical abilities, and now it was all being taken away from her. Determined to prove herself, Grace decided to leave the academy and venture out into the world. She packed a small bag with her essentials, a few scrolls of spells, and a worn leather-bound book of ancient lore. With a heavy heart, she turned her back on the familiar walls of the academy and stepped into the unknown. Her journey took her through dense forests, over towering mountains, and across vast, empty plains. She encountered strange creatures, encountered wise, old hermits, and even faced a few dangerous encounters. But through it all, Grace remained determined. She would find a way to harness her magic, to control the chaotic force that had always been a part of her. One day, as she was walking through a sun-dappled forest, Grace heard a faint sound. It was the sound of a sword clashing against metal. Curiosity piqued, she followed the sound until she came upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing, a fierce battle was taking place. A tall, muscular warrior, clad in gleaming armor, was locked in combat with a monstrous creature, its body covered in scales and its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Grace watched the battle with a mixture of fascination and fear. She had never seen such a fierce display of combat before. The warrior's swordsmanship was flawless, his every strike a blur of deadly precision. As the battle raged on, Grace realized that she could help. With a deep breath, she raised her hands and channeled her magic. A burst of energy erupted from her palms, striking the creature with blinding force. The monster howled in pain, its grip on the warrior loosening. Seizing the opportunity, the warrior delivered a final, deadly blow. The creature fell to the ground, lifeless. The warrior turned to Grace, his eyes wide with surprise. "Who are you?" he asked. Grace smiled. "My name is Grace," she replied, "and I'm a sorceress." The warrior, Talon, studied her for a moment before extending a hand, his grip firm and calloused. "I'm in your debt, sorceress," he said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "That creature had me on the ropes." They exchanged stories over a small fire. Talon spoke of his quest for vengeance against the Shadow King, whose dark forces had ravaged his homeland and slain his comrades. Grace told him of her exile and her search for meaning in her unruly magic. As the fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across their faces, the air grew heavy with a shared sense of purpose. "The Shadow King's influence is growing," Talon said gravely. "I fear for the fate of the realm." Grace felt a sudden jolt of understanding. "Perhaps our paths are meant to converge," she said. "Maybe my exile was not a punishment, but a calling." Together, they set out for the Oracle, a wise seer rumored to dwell in the ancient ruins of a long-forgotten civilization. The journey was fraught with danger. but their bond grew stronger with each step. They encountered bandits and beasts, each challenge serving to hone their skills and deepen their trust. The ruins loomed before them, shrouded in an eerie mist. The air was thick with the scent of ancient magic and decay. Grace felt the familiar tingle of her power awaken, responding to the latent energy that surrounded them. The Oracle, an elderly figure with eyes that gleamed like polished gems, greeted them in a chamber bathed in candlelight. His voice, though frail, carried the weight of centuries. He spoke of a prophecy, one that foretold the rise of a sorceress with the power to tip the balance of light and dark. "Your lineage, Grace," he said, his gaze piercing through her soul. "It is linked to the very order that has been tasked with preventing the Shadow King's reign for millennia." Her heart raced as the pieces fell into place. "What must I do?" she asked. The Oracle handed her a tome, its pages yellowed with age. "Study these ancient texts," he instructed. "Master your heritage and the spells within, and together, you and Talon may stand a chance against the darkness." With newfound resolve, Grace took the book. She knew that the road ahead was fraught with peril, but she was ready to face it. For she was no longer just a mischievous academy dropout. She was the key to the realm's salvation. Talon looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of awe and respect. "We must prepare," he said, his voice steady. "We're going up against an enemy that's been weaving his web for centuries." They spent days in the ruins, with Grace poring over the ancient texts, her eyes glowing with the intensity of her study. Talon trained tirelessly, his sword slicing through the air with a sound that echoed through the empty halls. The bond between them grew stronger, their determination to stop the Shadow King becoming a shared obsession. As Grace's understanding of her heritage deepened, she began to feel a strange power stirring within her. It was as if the very air was alive with the whispers of her ancestors, guiding her, urging her to become what she was born to be. One night, as the moon cast its silver glow upon the ruins, the Oracle called them to his chamber. "The time has come," he said, his voice crackling with urgency. "The Shadow King is amassing his forces. Your training must end, and your quest must begin." He handed them a map, etched with lines of power that crisscrossed the realm. "This will guide you to the heart of the Shadow Kingdom," he explained. "But beware, the path will not be easy. The Shadow King will not let the prophecy unfold without a fight." Grace took the map, her hand trembling slightly. "We will not fail," she said firmly, looking into Talon's eyes. Talon nodded, his gaze unwavering. "We stand together," he said, and Grace felt a surge of warmth in her chest. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, they set out. The path ahead was shrouded in mist, but their destination was clear. They would face the Shadow King, and together, they would save the realm from eternal darkness. Their journey was long and arduous, fraught with danger and discovery. They encountered allies in unexpected places and enemies that tested their mettle. Grace's magic grew more potent with each passing day, and Talon's skills in combat became legendary. In a tavern at the edge of the kingdom, whispers of their deeds had begun to spread. The girl with the fiery eyes, they called her, and the swordsman who fights for a lost cause. The tales grew with each retelling until their names became synonymous with hope in the face of despair. As they approached the shadowy borders of the empire, the air grew colder, the light dimmer. They could feel the oppressive presence of the Shadow King's power, a malevolent force that sought to extinguish all light. They knew the battles ahead would be fierce, but they were ready. For they had found more than just a quest in each other. They had found friendship and the strength to face the darkness that lay before them. And so, with hearts aflame and swords drawn, Grace and Talon stepped into the shadow of the Shadow Kingdom, their eyes set on the castle that loomed in the distance. The fate of the realm rested on their shoulders, and they would not falter. The landscape grew more twisted and corrupted the closer they got to the castle. The once lush vegetation, now a morbid tapestry of decay and shadows. Grace's magic was in constant conflict with the malevolent energy that suffused the land, and she had to fight to keep it in check. Their first test came in the form of a horde of nightmarish creatures, conjured by the Shadow King's dark sorcerers. Their eyes burned with a sickly green light, and their hissing whispers sent shivers down Grace's spine. But she stood firm beside Talon, their combined might cutting through the monstrous throng like a hot knife through butter. The castle walls grew taller and more foreboding, the very stones seeming to radiate a palpable malice. As they approached the drawbridge, a chilling wind picked up, carrying with it the screams of the damned. Grace took a deep breath, her eyes glowing with the power of her ancestors. They were greeted by a phalanx of the Shadow King's elite guards, their black armor shimmering with an unnatural luster. Talon's sword sang a song of steel as he carved a path through the enemy ranks, his movements a dance of death. Grace's spells crackled and burst around her, incinerating those who dared stand in their way. The castle's gates lay open before them, beckoning them into the very heart of darkness. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of decay and the cloying scent of fear. The walls whispered of the countless lives lost to the Shadow King's insatiable hunger for power. They ventured deeper into the fortress, navigating twisting corridors and battling the twisted creations that lurked in the shadows. Grace's magic grew stronger with each step, feeding on the very essence of the evil they sought to destroy. In the throne room, the Shadow King awaited them, his figure shrouded by an inky aura. His eyes, when they met hers, were like bottomless pits of despair, seeking to consume her very soul. But Grace was not afraid. With a roar that echoed through the halls, Talon charged the Shadow King, his sword gleaming in the flickering torchlight. Grace raised her hands, the air crackling with arcane energy as she prepared to unleash the full fury of her lineage. The battle was fierce, a clash of light and dark, steel and sorcery. The Shadow King's power was immense, but so too was the bond between Grace and Talon. They fought not just for themselves, but for every soul trapped in the Shadow's embrace. As the duel reached its crescendo, Grace felt a sudden surge of power, a gift from the spirits of her ancestors. She channeled it into a spell of pure, unbridled light, a beacon in the abyss. The room was flooded with a blinding radiance, and the Shadow King recoiled. Talon seized the moment, driving his blade through the Shadow King's chest. The creature screamed, a sound that sent shockwaves through the castle. The darkness that had clung to the stones began to recede, replaced by a warm, golden glow. The Shadow King fell, and with him, his empire of fear began to crumble. The realm was saved, but their victory was not without cost. The effort had taken a toll on Grace, and she knew that her destiny was now forever entwined with the fate of the land. But as she looked into Talon's eyes, she found comfort in their shared resolve. They had faced the darkness and emerged as heroes, their friendship forged in the fires of adversity. Together, they would rebuild, and together they would stand vigilant against any new threat that dared to rise. Their story was not over, for the prophecy had only just begun to unfold. But for now, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a hopeful light upon a world once shrouded in shadow. The people would remember the names of the fiery sorceress and the stoic swordsman, the ones who had dared to challenge the Shadow King and who had won. The realm rejoiced, and the two heroes were hailed as saviors. They traveled from village to village, sharing tales of their journey and the ultimate battle. Grace found that her magic, once a source of trouble, was now a beacon of hope and protection. Talon's blade, once stained with the blood of his enemies, now gleamed in the service of peace. But with every victory, they knew that darkness had not disappeared entirely. It lurked in the forgotten corners, waiting for the right moment to strike. And so, they continued to train and learn, preparing for the battles they knew would come. One evening, As they rested in a quiet village, an unexpected visitor arrived. A young girl, her eyes wide with awe, approached Grace. I know who you are, she stuttered. My grandmother spoke of a sorceress who would come to save us. She said you would teach me. Grace looked at her, seeing the same spark she had once felt in herself. I will, she promised, for we must pass on the knowledge and the strength to fight the shadows that still lurk. The girl's eyes lit up, and in that moment, Grace realized that her true purpose was not just to vanquish the Shadow King, but to pass on the legacy of her ancestors, to ensure that the world was ready for whatever darkness lay ahead. The days grew into months, and the months into years. Grace and Talon grew into legendary figures, founding a new academy of their own, one that embraced the wild spirits of young mages like Grace and the steadfast valor of warriors like Talon. Together, they trained a new generation to harness their powers and stand as guardians of the realm. Their paths had led them to this moment, and as they watched their students grow, they knew that the future was in good hands. Yet, the whispers of prophecy and the distant rumbles of unrest reminded them that the battle was never truly over. And so, they waited, ready to face whatever fate had in store. For they were bound by destiny, two sides of the same coin, light and darkness dancing together in the eternal dance of balance. The end of the Shadow King was only the beginning of their epic saga, a tale of friendship, love, and the unyielding spirit of those who refuse to let the night claim the day. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider subscribing to stay updated with our latest stories. Give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.